We got Cam here coming from us remotely from UK as standard, and here I am stuck at home, quarantined along with the others here. So, without further ado, let's get into the recap of our Week 5 matchups. Cam, I'm going to
Okay,
throw to you.
okay, so first up, we're going to go with the one that had a lot of controversy this week, which was Seattle at Houston. Houston came out on top by 32-23. However, I'm sure if you're following the XFL, the big controversy in this game was that the game ended 2 seconds before it should have. The situation was that Houston were going to take a knee. They had about 6 seconds to kill, so they take the snap. The plan was for PJ Walker to just toss it as high and give it the ball as much airtime as he can off the field to kill the time, and then that would be the game over. But he doesn't get the pass off. Instead, tries to take a knee. However, he takes the knee. What officially should have been with 2 seconds still on the clock, handing the ball to Seattle on the 21. However, the officials let the clock roll. The clock hits down to 0. They call the game. They trot off down the tunnel, and then the review booth they reviewed it, saw that it was wrong, but then said that they couldn't, bring everyone back out onto the field, although everyone was still on the field. So the game ends 32-23 to Houston, and well, I guess we'll never know what Seattle would have done with those 2 seconds.
Yeah, so the spread was 9 points, which in the XFL is a touchdown and a 3-point conversion away from tying, and there were 3 seconds left on the clock with that, because like you said, what the plan was is to have PJ Walker roll out to the right with one receiver downfield to avoid an intentional grounding, and that would burn probably a second or two right there, then launch the ball high up into the air and out of bounds, and basically just call it done. And it wasn't quite executed. He just went into victory formation, took the knee, and they did say there should be 2 or 3 seconds left from the 22-yard line of Houston, which certainly is a scoring position. So that does end with a little bit of controversy. Certainly it wasn't a guaranteed win or anything, but it might have forced overtime. So that caused a little bit of consternation among fans, and the reward for that is they don't get to go into the stadium at Seattle any longer, right?
Well, not any longer for foreseeable future. But we'll talk about that in the the preview. I mean, really, in terms of on the field stuff, that controversy papered up an iffy performance for Houston. Really, 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and a fumble from PJ Walker. So, having that controversy really helped them, because it's all anyone was talking about after the game, and not a so-so performance from Walker. But hey, he got the job done. Seattle, although playing quite well, continue to not have enough to win a game. So I think that's the bottom line for that one.
Yeah, well, certainly you can see that Houston is a premier team, but I think some of their sort of underlying woes there are a little bit concealed by their turnover dominance, and certainly if I've seen any consistency in this league with who wins and who loses, it's got to be who's turning the ball over, because there are a lot of turnovers, a lot of interceptions, and the occasional fumble, and even some blocked punts, which brings us to our next game, Cam. DC and St. Louis. Did you get a chance to view that one there?
Yes. I mean, we have one every week, and it's that the low-scoring war of attrition that happens. We get one every week. The low scorer. And they're not normally these, turnover, these battles of turnover things. Normally, if there's a game with a lot of turnovers, there's a lot of points because it puts the offense on the field more. This was just defenses getting stops, and in the end, DC's defense was better. They limited Seattle to 0 touchdowns. It finished 15-6 to DC. Those 6 St. Louis points coming from two field goals, and even DC, I think Well, I check the stat line here.
Yeah, there were 2 field goals and no, 3 field goals and a touchdown was how that 15 came about.
Yeah, it's just a war of attrition. Just getting the absolute bare minimum from what you can, and one happens every week. It's those sort of things are kind of just they become toss-ups really at the end of it.
Yeah, and my feeling on the whole thing is that it was a very good defensive battle, and that's sort of what I expected. Of course, Cardale Jones was benched after he threw an early touchdown, so a lot of fans on Reddit sort of saying that the blue St. Louis jerseys was causing flashbacks for him to Sonic the Hedgehog, and apparently he's sort of gone downhill, as one fan has observed, that as soon as he watched the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, his season and his ability to play quarterback just went to the garbage, and hasn't looked back yet. So they benched him for that 6'7" behemoth there, and he didn't really throw too many passes. I don't know that he has a tremendous amount of passing ability. One nice little zip for the first touchdown there for DC, but generally he just sort of ran, and it was kind of an abysmal passing game. Anyway, that'll wrap up that one, I guess. It's really DC kind of clinging to very New York, huh? So a lot of different. Well, Cam, I just sort of got all brain,
brain fog
here. Yeah. So I'm gonna throw to you, and let's sort of clean up my inability to think. I'm getting the coronavirus in the mind.
Okay, jeez. I mean, okay, we'll move on to our next game, which is New York at Dallas. If you're following the form, you'll know that this was nailed on for New York because Dallas can't win at home, save their lives. Finished New York 30, Dallas 12, and this was basically just a dominant performance from New York. Luis Perez showing great form, a continued great form now. We've seen it for a couple of weeks since he's come in to fill in for McGloin, who wasn't working at quarterback. It was pretty simple in terms of just, to sum up a game. New York were just better. Dallas continued to suffer with turnovers, specifically in the quarterback position. They had two interceptions, and they were both linemen. They get the oh god, I've got the coronavirus in mind now. I can't speak. But yeah, 2 interceptions, and they were both linemen, which says something about really the Philip Nelson's reads, or the ability of Dallas's O-line. Maybe a couple more weeks of that situation will tell us more about who really is the culprit to blame in terms of now Dallas's new age of turning the ball over to the opposition at every opportunity. But yeah, they're pretty simple. New York 30, Dallas 12. New York were just better.
Yeah, Dallas back with Philip Nelson, definitely back to the same old, can't get the ball downfield accurately. And that really shortens things up because it doesn't open up the run game. There's no ability to really get more than just passes going to about the line of scrimmage. And against a New York defense, which has always been strong, okay, even when they were getting beaten up and shut out, the defense was strong. The offense just, was crippling the team. So now that they have a little bit of an offensive perk, the Renegades are fine as a team, but they could easily find themselves on the outside looking in with the Landry Jones injury and taking now yet another loss. So definitely some struggles there for Dallas, and New York is on the upswing. So I feel like every week you can almost look at these performances and come up with a completely different conclusion, as we've seen through the season so far. But New York is in the mix. They're not totally out. We've got a big tie up in the East, and they're definitely in contention for the playoff spot at this point. So next game there. Go, sorry.
Yeah, I think another point on Dallas is that Hal Mumme now out as the offensive coordinator. He broke his leg in the same game that Landry went out, and Dallas said that he has not been able to perform his duties as effectively as offensive coordinator with the broken leg. So I'm not sure particularly how that affects your ability to identify and call the play, but hey, he's still on as an offensive advisor, but the actual offensive coordinator now at Dallas is Jeff Jagodzinski. I think I've pronounced that correctly. But yeah, he's now in at offensive coordinator. Not as much of a recognizable name as Hal Mumme, but yeah, we'll see how he does. We'll see how he does next week. So
yeah,
I think
I'm not sure why exactly he's incapable of performing his duties from the booth myself, but whatever it is, or maybe he, there may have been some other things going on as well behind the scenes, because a lot of these guys are kind of a little bit older school play callers, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes there as we do some mid-season takeaways. But we've got one final game to review, right? We got an LA Wildcats game there, Cam.
Yeah, yes, we do. It's the Tampa Bay Vipers at the LA Wildcats. This is the game that the scoreline and the points total was what a lot of people expected from the XFL. 75 total points in this game. People thought we'd see that a lot more than we have so far. This was a real interesting one. It was LA recorded, I think it was the largest comeback we've seen in the league. I think they were down by, at the most, they were down by 18, came back to win 41 to 34, and this was just an offensive showpiece. These were, big chunk plays on both sides, exciting, electric football, lots, pace was fast. This is what kind of the XFL promised it was going to be. I think it's taken it from week 5 to deliver a really great example. But no, this was a really good game, and I think it showed that LA, they're really here. They're here to compete, and I think at the end of the season they're definitely going to be, if they can show the resilience that they showed here, I think they're definitely going to be in with a playoff chance.
Yeah, I agree completely. This was an interesting game. I mean, even the Vipers, I'm not too down on them. It's just that, where they're sitting at 1-4 is pretty much they got to win out. I would think, to really have a shot. And this one was costly for them. It really, really was. They got out to an early lead, and the Vipers fans were gloating and happy and celebrating the victory. And man, did that turn around! It just. LA seems to have the biggest top end, and I say that with some sincerity and proof behind it, just because they're putting up more points than a lot of teams. They've scored at least, I think, 2 of the 3 highest scoring games in this league so far. So when LA's on, they can really, really generate some points. And like you said, I really thought this was going to be a high scoring points league with all these ways to score and all the major disadvantages, like if you kick off, you end up at the plus 45 and you mess up your kickoff and all that kind of thing. But for the most part, we've seen a lot of more defensive domination, and that really leads us into our mid-season takeaways. So after 6 weeks, I could say that's a major one for me. The points scored are a lot less than I had anticipated. A lot of these coaches, what I didn't expect is some of them are kind of old heads, that they didn't really come of age here in the spread offense era, and so a lot of the play calling and logic that they're sort of following is reminiscent of maybe more when I was a teenager or a child, where it was like, get your men lined up and then pound them. I mean, that's the Battlehawks too, right? New York Guardians with their run offense with Victor. It's like, line them up and pound the rock. Obviously, that didn't really work for Tampa Bay a few times. They had 4th and 1 a couple times and didn't get that taken care of that way. So, I'm seeing some guys start to recognize that maybe their first choice at quarterback wasn't the right one. It's not your traditional pocket passer, handoff. They got these dual threat guys. So, another takeaway is that we've got quarterbacks that are dual threats that are sitting on the bench that are better suited for today's style of play and the ability to ad lib. And so you think, well, this team's not very good. They don't have any quarterback. And a week later, bang, this guy comes off the bench and just like produces huge yards, huge offense out of nowhere. And you go, why wasn't this guy starting? And you go, oh, all these old coaches, like they're not thinking in terms of spread and, high flying offense. They want to win, 17-14, and that's a great game for them. That was a high scoring event. But I'm going to throw it to you, Cam. What are your takeaways?
I think takeaways definitely is it's been a very different league than what people expected. They expected, like we said, this high scoring, fast paced, end to end offenses just dominating the field. It's become something very different. I think that you've hit the nail on the head there, is these older style coaches who aren't, maybe, and it seems an odd choice for the XFL if that, that's, they wanted these high scoring, fast paced games to then, employ and, bring in these coaches that they maybe know aren't as savvy with the modern style of football. So I think that's made the league very different from what, the XFL promised it would be. But at the same time, I don't think that they've set out, besides, having games that are like 70, 80, 90 points total, they've achieved everything else that they set out to have. They've innovated the game in effective and fun ways. All the changes that they've made, despite maybe causing some issues for the officials in some cases, in terms of on-field stuff, has been fun. It's made the game better. It's shown us, yards from kickoffs and punts. We've seen more larger returns, which is fun. And something specifically is the run game. No one expected to have the run game be as big a part of this league as people thought. People thought it would just be through the air, massive chunk plays, receivers running riot with secondaries. But no, it's been these, big running performances in a lot of games that have made the difference, a la St. Louis, Tampa when they get it right, Dallas when they get it right. They've been and LA get it right more than exactly LA when they get it right. The run game has been very, very effective. I think that's something that not a lot of people expected.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess the other thing that I had forgotten to mention is just the special teams. I didn't think special teams would factor very large in this league, and it's been huge. I mean, how many games does a missed or made field goal make a difference? Or the punting, coming from the St. Louis Battlehawks king, and I hope he's okay because he really got dinged up this past week. But, those differences have actually played in a more strategic way, with it being a little bit lower scoring, a little bit more defensive. I'm really happy with the XFL. I'm just wondering if I'm going to go to my first love here and get back to watching college football when it comes around and be yelling to throw a flag when they kick a touchback. I'll be like, what are you guys doing? You can't do this. Why are you moving on the kick? You got to wait. You can't just run when he kicks the ball. So I've really loved the kickoff more than anything, I'd say. And so those are some of my takeaways. And that really brings us into our power rankings. So do you want to list them off here for us, Cam? Do you have them in front of you?
Yep, I got them in front of me here. We'll start off with the West. At the top, we have, no surprise, it's the Houston Roughnecks. They're 5-0. They continue to win, and that undefeated record and those wins just continue to paper over some of the cracks that, if you're really watching the performances, you do see. And then at number 2, we have the Los Angeles Wildcats coming in off their big point win against Tampa. And then number 3, we have the Dallas Renegades. And at the bottom, we have Seattle, who I don't think that's going to surprise anyone, the 1-4. They don't play badly, but they just seem to never have enough to get a win on the board. Any thoughts on that, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, Seattle needs at least another 3 seconds before we can move them up. That's really what it comes down to. So, who do we have here in the East then?
So in the East, at the top, and the East is much more tighter these days. But at the top, we have the St. Louis Battlehawks at 3-2, and then at number 2 we have DC also at 3-2, and then what's this? It's New York at number 3, also at 3-2, and then the sort of the runt of the litter is Tampa Bay at 1-4, which again, like Seattle, don't play terribly badly. They just seem to never have enough to get wins. But yeah, the East definitely is a very tight division. It's turning out to be, and like 1 through 3 there, they're all 3-2. You're going to see all sorts of movement between those the back half of the season, unless of course Tampa decides that they suddenly find that this winning factor, and then God knows what you're going to see. That could really shake things up. But yeah, it's going to be those top 3 really neck and neck until the end of the season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's true. I think that there's a lot of shake up there, and certainly Tampa Bay. Again, none of these teams are really head and shoulders above the others, or terribly in the dumps compared to the rest. We certainly have a big race in the East that's going to be, may come down to touchdown margin, because that's one of the tiebreakers. So touchdowns may loom large. I mean, if you're winning games, kicking 5 field goals, you may be left out of the playoffs. So that's a pretty big deal there. And that really wraps up our that part of the show, which leads us into the game 6 here for everybody. And the first up, we've got Houston at New York. What do you think, Cam?
It's hard to bet against Houston at all now. They're undefeated. They've got so much momentum behind them. It's a New York side at home that we know can win a game, and we know can make plays. Both sides of the ball. But we've said this now for weeks. Teams playing Houston, we've said that some of these teams have great defenses, and if they can get these turnovers and they can, put up some points, that they might have a chance. And they always do, but they always still seem to lose. So I'm gonna keep going with Houston, although I think that the time as an unbeaten team is numbered, but I don't think it'll be this week.
Okay, well, I pretty much agree. I think that this is going to be a very tight game, and I agree that Houston, I love them. I honestly have more fun watching them than anybody, so I have a little bias there, despite the fact that I'm just a general fan of the league. And I'm going to say that this one's going to be with a field goal difference. I really believe that. So I could see it where Houston's got PJ Walker, and he's finally got a game where he's just frustrated and stuff's not working. And that's where I'm kind of torn, because I'm close. I'm 50-50 on calling the upset, and I guess just to give us a little difference here in our call, I'm gonna say New York by a field goal, 17-14.
That's understandable. Yeah.
Which brings
it really is.
Yeah. This brings us to St. Louis at Tampa Bay. So, what do you think about that one there, Cam?
Now, this is an interesting one, because St. Louis has proved, in terms of putting up points, a bit on and off. It's not that they haven't won games when they haven't put up as many points. It's that they don't put up points, and we've seen this Tampa side put up lots of points. Yes, they haven't won as many games, but they've certainly, in terms of an average, put up, consistency-wise, more points than St. Louis. And they're at home, and they've proved that they can win at home. So I think that I'll tell you what, I love John Tamu, but I really think that Tampa Bay has a chance with this game. So I'm gonna pick Tampa.
Interesting, and I think this could be a tight one. I think St. Louis is going to get itself cleaned up, but here's what concerns me: both, in that game, and I know I don't want to go back to the recap too much here, but with the game against DC, both starting centers were injured, and one thing is that uh, St. Louis did not make good in-game transitions there. They shifted some guards around and things like that and had a backup center. And they were getting relentlessly attacked up the middle in that center slot. When they finally sort of squeezed down to add some more support, they started getting, attacked from the end position there and on the outside. So I think with a week of practice, I'm going to go ahead and say St. Louis gets itself back together and it's okay, based on hopefully the ability to get some reps in at the right position and hopefully their offensive line shores up. I think Tampa Bay is certainly dangerous. They've shown that they have nothing to lose and everything to gain, and that puts them in a position that they might be playing just all out. But I'm still picking St. Louis. So that brings us to Dallas Renegades at the DC Defenders, Cam.
This is another one. Dallas, we've seen very strong on the road. Only seem to win on the road, but DC are very, very strong at home. So it's basically this is basically you'd say those cancel each other out, and it's just form. It's just players and plays, and I think that Dallas maybe needs, now they've got a new offensive coordinator, I think they still need now another week or two to find themselves. It seems that we're always saying this about Dallas, is that something major changes and it's like, oh, well, maybe this week they need another week, and maybe then they'll find themselves, and then something else changes. Oh, well, they now need another week to find themselves in this position, to find themselves now with this new personnel. So I think that DC, having now they've won a game, they've stopped that slump. They're very good at home, very solid defensively, and Dallas turn over the ball a lot. So I think I'm going to go with a DC home win.
Yeah, I think probably the same. I think that Dallas, this is going to be a run game. Okay, this is going to be run, pound the rock, and I think that DC's offensive line is going to be a little bit more up to the task than Dallas at this point, just from what I've seen. So I'm going to take DC at home because I'm not betting against the beer snake. You know what I mean? Like, the beer snake's got a bite. So that brings us to the game with the home field advantage. LA at Seattle. Washington's governor has declared sort of, if you will, a state of emergency, and there will be no fans in the stands in Seattle because we have a lot of coronavirus cases in the state of Washington. We got Wildcats at Dragons. What do you say, Cam?
Yeah, this is. I mean, I'm looking at it on the XFL site right now, and there is no buy ticket option, which is mildly surreal. But yeah, it's a precaution, and it's a very smart precaution in terms of don't have massive gatherings of people when there's disease going about. It's just a lot of people aren't going to like it. They what is sport without the fans? But it's it's the best way to have things continue sort of as planned without putting people at risk. In terms of on the field stuff, it's you'd like to say that Seattle might have a home team advantage, but that home team advantage is built by the crowd. So I think that hey, at least they'll be able to hear the plays better. But I think LA is a very effective team, and in terms of a road, this is a West Coast road game for them. It's not a terrible distance, so I'm going to go with LA on this one.
Yeah, and there won't be any body clock, that's for sure. There isn't that home field advantage with no crowd. It's just going to be a stadium with metal around it and a lot of quiet. Not much anything. I don't know what they'll even do with the sidelines. I suppose they'll still have the sideline crews doing the interviews. So I'm not exactly sure how all of it comes off yet. I don't know how this is going to work for the league here. But this isn't just an XFL decision. Obviously, it's the state of Washington, and it makes good sense. And we don't want to imperil a population because the coronavirus, as it is not necessarily a major threat, but it can become a threat very quickly if the rate of spread is rapid. That's where you see an increase of the death rate from less than 1% to 4 or 5% real fast. and those numbers are drastically different. So a lot of universities also shutting down in the United States and saying we're doing everything remotely. It's been there's just a lot of response, and I don't want to get too much into the public health side of things there, but it makes good sense. I am going to take LA Wildcats for the win. I think they've just got a lot of top end. Seattle's got a great defense, but again, this is a neutral site game at this point, and I'm going to take LA for the win. Any closing thoughts there, Cam?
No, I think that really it's ended on quite a sour note, talking about possible, pandemic and things having to be cancelled for the good of public health. But yeah, I think I think we need something upbeat. Beer snakes, sideline interviews, players swearing, yay, good fun things.
We're just trying to do our jobs.
Yeah, remember that stuff. That's the fun stuff. We in the UK, we're just in complete denial of it at this point. The Premier League is still being played. The EFL, we're still going to play games in stadiums. We bring the people in. We're not going to cancel the schools. What do you mean? Well, there's only been 500 cases. What are you saying?
Yeah, well,
there's nothing to worry about.
Hopefully none of us turn into Italy or anything, and we all stay healthy. So with that, from all of us at From the Stands, Extreme Fear Lockdown Edition, we'll see you next time in quarantine. Good night, everybody.
Bye.